It's that time of the year again. Let the madness begin. Hi guys, and welcome to this year's edition of CCS Bracketology. I'm your host, Brian Principe. And before I help break down the South region, let's kick it over to Garrett Lash, Sarah Stone, and Edwin Santamaria, who have their take out on the East.
What's up, you guys? My name is Garrett. This is Sarah. This is Edwin. Today we're going to break down the East region for you in the 2015 NCAA Tournament. Now, we all picked chalk for the top 4 seeds in the first round. Easy matchups for them. Starting with the 5 seed, it gets a little bit interesting. And I personally have the upset, Wyoming over Northern Iowa. Why? Because I feel like Northern Iowa is very one-sided. Seth Tuttle is an All-America player, leading his team in points, rebounds, and assists. But if Wyoming can take that away from him, I think they have a more balanced offense and they can easily defeat Northern Iowa, who plays in a much weaker conference. The next matchup, popular upset pick, they picked Providence to lose to the 11 winner between Boise State and Dayton. I think it's going to be Dayton playing in Dayton in the first round. However, I think that inside and outside, Providence's offense is too strong, and I think they'll take that one. The 7-10 matchup, Michigan State and Georgia. I think that Michigan State has much better wins in a much stronger Big Ten, while Georgia really does not have that many good wins in a suspect SEC, and I think Michigan State easily defeats Georgia. The 8-9 matchup in the East, NC State and LSU. LSU led on the inside by Jordan Mickey and Jarrell Martin. Very strong. They both lead the team in rebounds and points. However, they're both sophomores, and LSU has been pretty inconsistent in a pretty weak SEC conference this year. Meanwhile, NC State, while also very inconsistent in their ACC conference, does have better wins, and they're led by a senior front court, and I do believe that they get the win here.
Okay, so that takes us to my personal favorite upset. NC State, I think, will win over Villanova, although Villanova really does have one of the highest scoring offenses. I think that NC State ultimately is a great team under pressure. They've also been shown to be great in high-paced games, and really great guards, Lacey, Barber, and Turner will take over the game, while NC State also has a great defense with BJ Anya, who gets some great blocks and defensive rebounds.
My matchup that I'm interested in would be Michigan State versus Virginia, Big Ten ACC Challenge. I feel that Virginia's suffocating defense will be too much for Tom Izzo's boys, and I feel that Virginia will roll past the Spartans handily.
So we both picked Louisville and UVA to be in the regional final, with UVA winning. Why did you pick them?
I picked it because of their defense. I feel like they have one of the best in the nation, and they'll suffocate Louisville.
I agree. I think that UVA is going to be able to slow down the pace of Louisville, and if they've got Anderson back, they'll have a high scoring, reliable shooter and a team leader.
Yep, that's it for us in the East. Let's kick it off to the guys in the Midwest.
What is up? This is the Midwest bracket of the 2015 NCAA Tournament. A lot of people are saying this is Kentucky's bracket to lose, as they are undefeated headed into the tournament. They were looking to go 40-0, but there are other games in the tournament to look forward to besides Kentucky running the tables. So, Nick, what games do you see happening? Like, what are the results of some of the early games in the first round?
Well, I think one game to look at is definitely the West Virginia and Buffalo game. I think it's going to be a pretty tough contested game, but I think West Virginia has the edge with Jawan Staten, the senior guard leader, who's averaging 15 points a game. So I think West Virginia does take the win in that one.
12 seeds do beat 5 seeds. Kind of a lot. It happens pretty much every year except for about 3 times since the tournament's expanded to 68 teams. So I think Buffalo will beat the Mountaineers, led by Coach Bobby Hurley, used to be a Duke player, and players Shannon Evans and Justin Moss. They're a great 1-2 punch for the Bulls. They will beat the Mountaineers.
Yes, I agree with him. I think Justin Moss and Shannon Evans will definitely be a great benefit to Buffalo, and I think they'll end up topping West Virginia.
Further down the bracket is the 6-11 matchup between the Butler Bulldogs and the Texas Longhorns. How do you guys see that game shaking out?
Well, personally, I think the Longhorns have a little upper edge on this one. I think that Coach Rick Barnes has a lot of experience in the tournament than Butler's Chris Holtman, so I think Texas does win this one by double digits.
I actually disagree. I think Chris Holzman really has those guys playing really hard over at Butler, especially Kellen Dunham. He's averaging about 17 points a game this season, and I think along with him and along with the rest of his teammates, they're really going to give Texas a run for their money and ultimately beat them.
Certainly, Texas does have the talent and have the upper hand in the talent department, but Butler is known for their grit through the tournament, as we've seen them go to the final game 2 years in a row under Brad Stevens.
Now, as we head down to like the bottom part of the Midwest bracket, there's Wichita State playing Indiana, and then you have Kansas playing New Mexico State. So what's y'all's take on those games?
I think we both agree that Kansas and Wichita State will both move on to the second round. Wichita State plays Indiana. That'll be a tough game. Indiana did limp into the tournament, but they can shoot lights out when
hot.
When hot, absolutely. But we disagree on the Kansas-Wichita State. What do you see that as?
I actually see Kansas beating Wichita State. What about you?
I think Wichita State will beat Kansas. It's amazing what Bill Self has done with this team. They don't have a low post presence as they have in years past under Bill Self. But I do see Ron Baker and company for Wichita State taking advantage of that, and they will beat Kansas and move on to the Sweet 16.
So I think we pretty much all agree that Kentucky and Notre Dame are going to meet each other in the Elite Eight. So what's y'all's take on that game?
I think that Notre Dame is probably the best offense that Kentucky will see in this tournament. They put their three-point shooting on display in the ACC Championship, but as we've seen time and again this season, Willie Cauley-Stein, Karl Anthony Towns, the whole front line on Kentucky, they can shut down the smaller Notre Dame front court. I think Kentucky will be moving on to the Final Four.
Yes, I think Notre Dame is probably the best offensive team that Kentucky has seen all season, and I think that they will definitely give the Wildcats a run for their money. But I think Karl Anthony Towns will just be a little bit too much for Notre Dame to handle, and I think it's going to be a close game, but I think Kentucky is going to end up winning.
Well, I think I'm going to be that guy this time. I'm going to pick Notre Dame to beat the Wildcats for this pretty much an upset victory. Notre Dame's obviously one of the best offenses in the country. They are second in the NCAA for field goal percentage to shoot 51% from the field. And then you also have, they average 78 points a game, and you got shooters like Pat Connaughton, and then you got Demetrius Jackson. So I think Notre Dame's going to ultimately pull out this one, and they'll make it to the Final Four.
Those are the type of picks that will win you a lot of money in some betting pools. Picking Notre Dame over Kentucky, probably the best team that is in the tournament. That is it for the Midwest. We will send it to the South bracket now.
Thanks, guys. We're here to break down the South bracket. Jennison Jenkins, Claudia Chicami, and myself, Brian Principe. A very exciting bracket, but with three teams that definitely scream upset to me. And these are three of the top teams. You got Duke, you have Gonzaga, and Georgetown. Georgetown's a team that hasn't made it out of the first round in their last 4 attempts 3 times. So, Jennison, Claudia, we'll start with you, Claudia. What are you thinking about for your first round upset here? You have anyone?
Yeah, in the first round, I really see Davidson being somebody that surprises everyone and beats Iowa in the first round. And then I can also see them going on to beat Gonzaga in the second round.
Really? That would be a huge upset. That would be a great run for the Wildcats. No Seth Curry, though, so you got to be careful. But, Jennison, what do you got going on for the first round?
I actually have Stephen F. Austin coming out and beating Utah by a great margin because I just think Utah has had an awful last few games and they need to pick it up a little bit if they want to be at a tournament level with the rest of the tournament teams.
Yeah, Utah's definitely a team that has kind of limped into the March Madness Tournament. And Stephen F. Austin, the team we saw last year, went on a kind of crazy 3-point, 4-point play. So maybe a little magic for Stephen F. Austin going forward. If you're looking now more towards the Sweet 16, Jennison, what are you looking for your Sweet 16 matchups?
I'm really looking forward to maybe an Iowa State-Iowa matchup, a little duel between the rivals. I think it'd be great for Iowa State and Iowa to go at it again. Iowa will have a little bit of a revenge factor working for them, and they have a sense of urgency. But Iowa State just has the size. They have George Niang, and they also have the higher seed, so they're just going to be high on themselves, and they're going to be ready to get into the Final Four.
Now, speaking on Niang, you brought up a great point. One of the best players in college basketball, but kind of gets overshadowed by some of these other bigger guys, especially in this bracket when you have Jahlil Okafor for Duke. Obviously one of the guys that you're going to want to key on, but does Niang now kind of fly under the radar, and that just fuels his fire for Iowa State?
I feel like yes. He's definitely NBA material.
Absolutely.
He plays at a great tempo. He can shoot the ball. He passes the ball. He's a great spirit for the team. I just think overall Iowa State has a great leader for them. Yeah,
15, almost 16 points per game for Niang. Very, very difficult to match up against. Most teams, if not anyone, can really match up against Niang. Looking forward to now your Elite Eight matchups, Claudia. What do you got going on for the Elite Eight?
I see Iowa State and Duke going at it. I think both teams are very strong, and Iowa State has had a great comeback lately. And I think that even though Duke is the number 1 seed, I see Iowa State beating them and going on to the Final Four.
Yeah, so Iowa State, definitely a team, Jennison, that you said has potential to go all the way to the Final Four. You even think they might have a chance to win. Who do you got matching up against them in the Elite Eight?
I have Duke against Iowa State. I just think Duke has a certain weakness about them that they may make it to the Elite Eight with how the South is looking right now. But then again, Iowa State is a lot stronger team. They have the height, they have the skill, they have the talent, they have the athleticism. I'm not saying Duke is a bad team at all. They always show up to the tournament. But I just think Iowa State's going to go to the Final Four. They're going to play someone like a UNI or a Virginia, and they're going to win the entire tournament.
Now, obviously, Duke is led by their 3 freshmen, Justice Winslow, Tyus Jones, and, of course, Jalil Okafor. But, Claudia, Iowa State's been on an incredible roll in the last few games.
Yes, they have. In their past 5 games, they've been down a total of 75 points, but were able to come back and win all of those 5 games.
Unbelievable.
So they really have been showing everyone that even when they're down, they've still been able to somehow come back and win those games. And I think they're a dark horse, and they're going to blindside Duke, and they're never going to see it coming. They're going to win and go on to the Final Four.
Wow. And you know what? I have a little bit of a different variation in my Elite Eight matchup. I'm going to go crazy and stick with the Utes, a team that exact opposite of Iowa State, a team that has limped right into this tournament, a team that's been down and out. They've lost 3 of their last 4, and I think they get to this point. How they get there might be an adventure. Stephen F. Austin might knock them out in the first game. I think the Utah Utes are a team that's going to be an enigma in this tournament, but if they can get to this point, who knows? I think that if they get to this point against Iowa State, they're going to get blown out, honestly blown out. They're going to run out of steam. Iowa State is a team that's on a roll and is poised to make a Final Four here. So, Jennison, you wanted to talk a little bit about Gonzaga, a team that has had that first weekend kind of curse against them. What does it take for Gonzaga to make it out of that first weekend?
I really think they have to bring their A game. It has been said that they have maybe their best team yet that has made it to the tournament. Again, they haven't made it to the Final Four or anywhere past the Sweet 16 since 2007. They really need to get out of that slump, and they're going to have that. They're going to have that urgency, but they also still have the history of never getting out of that first weekend.
I mean, Kevin Pangos, one of the best players in the country, but does Gonzaga have enough to make it this year? Who knows? Definitely a team I think a lot of people are rooting for, but definitely a team that has struggled in the tournament. But real quick, 2 upsets that Jennison and I actually have that really don't affect too much of this bracket, but we'll definitely throw a bit of a curveball. Take it with one of your upsets that you have for this bracket.
I definitely have St. John's over San Diego State because I feel like San Diego State didn't have much on their schedule, and St. John's always throws the curveball in the tournament and comes out with a good game.
Yeah, and also watch out for this one. A team that is way overrated, never plays well in the tournament, Georgetown, gonna get axed. And when I mean axed, they're gonna get axed big time by Eastern Washington. Watch out for the Eagles. They're coming for you, Georgetown. So that's it for us. We're going to kick it over to the West bracket where they have the final predictions.
All right, we're bringing it in from the South to our final bracket. I'm Brett Williams alongside John Wagner, and we're 2 W's taking on a 3rd W, the West region. And just so appropriately, the number 1 seed in the West is another W, the Wisconsin Badgers. They've been one of the best teams in the land all year.
Absolutely. They've got a lot of good stuff going on. The Big Ten champions, and Frank Kaminsky is pretty much unstoppable, and I don't think they'll have any kind of issue with Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, Frank the Tank, 18.2 points per game, 8.0 rebounds per game. This man is a beast, and the whole lineup really pretty much back from last year minus Ben Brust. So look for the Badgers to do great things.
Exactly. Yep. And then the next game down the list, we got Oregon and Oklahoma State. That game could really go either way, but I think Oregon will probably take that one. They played a harder schedule this year, and they've got some more prolific scores than OK State does. And,
I agree. Yeah, Joseph Young, Pac-12 Player of the Year. I think the Ducks can get that done.
Yeah.
And then we move on to Arkansas and Wofford. Now, that's a 5-12 matchup, and we know that the stigma is about those 12s can always take down the 5s. You think Wofford's got what it takes?
I really don't think so. I mean, they came out of the SoCon, right? SoCon? Yeah. So they came out of there, and that's nice. And I believe it's the first time they've been in. No, they actually, no, I take, yeah, they take that back. 2 years in a row. But Bobby Portis is probably going to, I think he's going to take the Terriers to town.
Yeah, Portis is pretty solid. And then Michael Qualls, he came in and threw down on the Gamecocks here at the end when Arkansas had that big comeback win at Colonial Life. That was a big factor in there, so I think Arkansas will have what it takes. And then we move on to our first disagreement, I think, of this bracket, the 4-13 between North Carolina and Harvard.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm a little biased. I'm an NC State fan at heart, but I just think that UNC is maybe a little bit. Obviously, they're a great team. Marcus Page, Bryce Johnson. What's his? I can't even remember the guy's name. That's okay. We'll forget it. Harvard. They came off a surprise win against Yale in that playoff game to win the Ivy League, and they won 2 tournament games in a row the past 2 years. So why not?
Yeah,
why not?
I think Harvard gives himself a chance anytime by the way they play, but I just don't really trust them with the coming in late in the Ivy League. Yale kind of blew it. I think Yale had it in their hands, and then Dartmouth came back in that crazy finish. So I think North Carolina will play on with the chip on their shoulder for Dean Smith. I think that's going to give him some emotional motivation for this tournament. I think it'll take him a couple rounds.
Yeah, especially it doesn't help that they lost to Notre Dame in the ACC championship.
True.
So they'll definitely have something to play for to prove themselves. The next thing we got going is Xavier against the play-in game, either BYU or Ole Miss. We're going to assume that BYU is going to take that win, and we're going to play from there. What do you think about that game?
Yeah, I think BYU, I think will have a chance to do some great things. I mean, Joe Lenardi said earlier today, actually, he thinks BYU is going to get into the Sweet 16. I think they're a pretty good 11 seed to bet on. Certainly in the terms of the playing game, Ole Miss just been a little up and down, hadn't been too consistent. Gamecocks took them out in the SEC tournament, and then Xavier just hasn't played to the level that BYU has, with certainly offensively this year.
Exactly. I definitely think Kyle Collinsworth, if you're going to have one player with 6 triple-doubles in the same season, just as many as Shaq has.
That's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, that's something you can't do without. I think that BYU has a great chance to take Xavier down, and that's one I think I'll pick.
Yeah, and going on to the second part of that quadrant, we're going to Baylor and Georgia State. And the Georgia State Panthers, Kevin Ware, great story there, coming back after his injury at Louisville. But when you don't score 40 points in your conference championship, can't really bet on that.
Yeah, not a lot you can do there. Baylor, that's a team South Carolina saw earlier this year. We played well against them, and they played well. That was actually one of their more unfortunate losses on the year, right? And
it was a close one.
Yeah, it was a close one, but I think they have best chance to beat that team.
Fair enough. And we move on to the bottom now, VCU and Ohio State. We'll talk about that a little bit. VCU coming out of the A10, they stumbled a little bit, then they got back on track, ended up winning that conference tournament. And I think they've obviously lost Breonte Weber, is a big strength for them, but Travion Graham and Mo Ali Cox, who I saw actually in high school, I played against my team a couple of times and was quite the factor in there.
Yeah, I think without the defensive pressure on VCU and Ohio State thriving with behind D'Angelo Russell, I think they'll take that upset. It's not really an upset, 7-10, but I think they'll take the win there.
You got the Buckeyes, I got the Rams. Should be a good game in that 7-10 spot. Then bringing in Arizona and Texas Southern. Don't think the Wildcats are going to have too much trouble.
No, I don't think they will either. They're a dominant team all year, winning the Pac-12, and I think they'll win here today.
Sounds good. So we move on to the round of 32, Wisconsin and Oregon. This was a matchup in the round of 32 last year. Badgers took down the Ducks in a really close game, actually. I think the Wisconsin's going to have the edge in this one as well. Oregon not as strong as they were last year, and Wisconsin arguably stronger.
I got nothing else to say. That's the pick I got.
All right, Arkansas and North Carolina for me, Arkansas and Harvard for you.
Well, either way, if UNC wins this game against Harvard, I think that they'll beat Arkansas. Obviously, you mentioned 2 of Arkansas's best players. I think that UNC, while occasionally inconsistent, they're a more all-around team, and I think they'll be able to beat Arkansas in the second round.
That's a fair point. I do think it's going to be a great game, probably one of the best of the round of 32 if Arkansas and UNC do play. And I'm going to go ahead and give the edge to the Tar Heels. ACC superior to the SEC. Unfortunately, coming from South Carolina, but it's I guess the truth in basketball. And I do think, again, the Dean Smith factor will help North Carolina get the edge.
Next up, we got BYU and Baylor. If that's the game, either Baylor or Xavier BYU. My apologies. What do you think about that game?
Yeah, Baylor's certainly a tough team playing in the Big 12. They got a lot of good opponents that they play on a regular basis. And BYU in the West Coast Conference, I questioned a bit. They did get a big win at Gonzaga near the end of this season, but I just don't know if their competition is going to hold up at the end of the day. They could win that game. They're definitely a good upset pick, but I'm going with Baylor.
Yeah, I mean, even though you're averaging 83 points a game on the year, that's definitely an amazing stat to have. But when you're playing against the competition in the West Coast Conference, like you said, they definitely haven't seen the level of competition that Baylor has. So I'll also take Baylor. So
then we take it to the bottom of the round of 32. For me, VCU, Arizona. For you, Ohio State, Arizona.
Yep. I'm still going to take Arizona there. Ohio State would give them more of a run for their money, in my opinion. But either way, the Wildcats are going to come out on top.
Yeah, it's hard to go against Arizona. I know Shaka Smart's going to have the Rams coached up, but they fell in the first round last year. I think Arizona's got it. So as we go to the round of the Sweet 16, rather, Wisconsin and North Carolina I've got. And that's going to be a great game, too. That'll be out west in Los Angeles. I'm going to go ahead and give the edge to the Badgers. Again, just too dominant. And again, North Carolina losing that ACC championship game, I think that showed a little bit of weakness for the Tar Heels.
Yeah. In that ACC tournament, you see teams playing 3 or 4 games in 3 or 4 days. So you see how they play under, a little bit of tiredness. So you got to imagine the same type of situation is going to happen. After playing a few games, obviously they're going to get more of a break, but still the same type of deal. A lot of stress on them. But I definitely think Wisconsin and Frank Kaminsky going to take that one. And then we're going to move on to, we got Baylor and Arizona. What do you think about there?
Yeah, Baylor, Arizona, another solid matchup coming in there. It's, could go either way. Baylor's, again, solid team. Arizona, though, I think Stanley Johnson, 14.1 points per game, 6.6 rebounds, and Rondé Hollis Jefferson in there as well. TJ McConnell, they've got a solid lineup. They're going to be able to take it to the Elite Eight.
Yeah. Can't agree more. Finally, last game out of the West, we got Wisconsin and Arizona to make it to the Final Four. I think that Wisconsin, we disagree here, but I think Wisconsin's going to win this game. Like we've said all along, just too dominant. Obviously, Arizona's got a lot of scorers, but in Wisconsin, they got one man doing the work there. For the most part, they're a big team and they're a solid team, but Wisconsin, they're going to take that Big 12 pride all the way to the Final Four.
Yep, certainly a great matchup here for either one of these teams to win and then probably face Kentucky in the Final Four. And I think both of those teams are probably the best matchups to go ahead and contend with the Wildcats in that matchup if they get there. But with this was an Elite Eight matchup last year in the West region. Wisconsin was the 2 seed, Arizona the 1, so a bit of a reversal from last year. And I'm going to go with the reverse of everything here. So last year it was actually one of the best games of the tournament. Went to overtime. Wisconsin ended up winning 64-63. So we know these teams match up well against one another. They played that game at the Honda Center in Anaheim. Now recently the LA hockey thing has been quite a nice rivalry to see between the Ducks and the Kings. And last year the Kings went into Anaheim, got that Game 7 win. So they're getting the momentum back to LA. This year the West region is going to the home of the Kings in the Staples Center. So where Wisconsin got the best of Arizona as a 2 seed in Anaheim, I think Arizona will get the best of Wisconsin as a 2 seed in Los Angeles.
Always creative, always creative. So that wraps up West region. If you want to go ahead and we'll talk about our Final Fours. I have UK, Wisconsin, I have UVA, and then I have Duke. And I think coming into the national championship game, it's going to be Wisconsin and Duke. And I think Wisconsin will take that game.
Yeah, got the Badgers going all the way.
Yeah, I do.
And I have the Wildcats going all the way, the Arizona Wildcats, that is. I have them taking down Kentucky in the Final Four. I think it's a great matchup there. On the other side, I've got UVA and Iowa State. I really do believe in those comeback kids that George Niang has said. I think they're going to get through Duke. I think they're going to actually get through UVA and go against Arizona for the title game. And you know what? Last year I sort of infamously picked Louisville to win the whole thing based on their home court, the KFC Yum Center. That kind of screwed me over. I actually won the bracket because UConn got all the way there, but I could have done even better if UConn had won. So I'm going to go against that this year. I say Arizona wins because guess where Iowa State is playing its first 2 rounds this tournament? The KFC Yum Center.
The chicken bucket.
That's it.
There it is.
Enough said.
Yeah.
So.
And I will say, if Kentucky does not lose to Arizona or Wisconsin, then they're not going to lose. That's going to be that's going to be the breaking point there. And if they make it through there, that's the national championship. The platoons will take the whole thing.
Yes. It's going to be a fun tournament.
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
Always, it's March Madness, and that's how we do it around here at Capital City Sports.
There it is. All right.
Thanks again. This is, once again, John Wagner alongside, this is John Wagner. I'm Brett Williams, and thank you for joining us for the West Region Breakdown, and we're going to send it back to Brian, who will take us through everybody's Final Fours.
So now that you guys have your first look at each region, let's take a look at the Final Four predictions from the CCS staff. So unsurprisingly, 5 out of the 12 reporters from Capital City Sports have decided to go with the favorite. Kentucky looks to be the national championship team from Chandler, Edwin, Garrett, Stan, and myself. But there are a few of us that also believe that other teams have an opportunity. Brett, Claudia, Jennison, they're all going to go with Iowa State as a 3 seed to make a run and win the national championship. John and Sarah, on the other hand, like the number 1 seed out of the West, Wisconsin. Can the Badgers' hard-nosed defense, led by their coach, Bo Ryan, finally make the push to win the national title? Maybe the last chance for Frank Kaminsky as he's a senior. But the one outlier out of everybody is Nick Jones going with his Notre Dame Irish. Can the Irish continue their run after winning the ACC tournament and now bring it to the national title? We'll have to wait and see. The surprise really looks like Northern Iowa making it to the Final Four with picks from John, Stan, and Jennison. Jennison going with her Iowa faithful with Northern Iowa and Iowa State. This year certainly figures to be as exciting as ever in the NCAA March Madness Tournament. So there it is, folks, your full analysis of the 2015 NCAA March Madness Tournament. For all of us here at Capital City Sports, we hope you enjoy this year's exciting tournament, and be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at CCS and SGTV, and check us out on Instagram at Capital City Sports. I'm Brian Principe, and we'll see you next time.